Welcome to our next video message about the New Testament. Today we are dealing with the Gospel according to Mark. In the previous video we saw that the New Testament contains the Gospel according to Matthew, the Gospel according to Mark, the Gospel according to Luke, and the Gospel according to John. Each Gospel describes the Lord Jesus in its way. Matthew, you have seen, shows him as the king. And Mark, his full name was John Mark, well, he describes the Lord Jesus as the servant. Initially, Mark was a servant and fellow worker of the Apostle Paul. He joined Paul on his first missionary journey. We find this in the book of Acts. Well, at first, Mark was not a good worker. From the Acts of the Apostles, we can see that when on their journey, the missionary team had arrived in Perga, that's in today's Turkey, John Mark no longer wanted to travel or cooperate with the other ones. He just left the group and went home. This later caused troubles between Paul and Barnabas. Here are pictures of the excavations of the city of Perga. It is interesting that the Apostle Peter later, in his letter, called him his son in faith. Therefore, some assume that after Mark returned to Israel, first his uncle Barnabas and then the Apostle Peter received him and helped him make a restart in faith. According to Papias, bishop of Hierapolis in 100 AD, Mark later came to Rome, where he worked as an interpreter for the Apostle Peter as he preached in Rome. From him, Peter, Mark, received the first-hand story of Jesus. This he later used to write his Gospel. By the way, what is still important, in Paul's second letter to Timothy, chapter 4:11, we read about Mark that the confrontation he had with Paul was settled. There, Paul writes that Mark is again useful to him for his service. This is so comforting also for us. When we did things wrong, there's always a way back. It is so interesting that by comparing different Bible verses, one can reconstruct a person's story. The servant Jesus. Isn't it surprising that God gave John Mark, the initially failing servant, the assignment to portray the Lord Jesus as the perfect servant? The key verse in the Gospel to Mark is found in chapter 10. For even the Son of Man has come not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. If you have a servant, it is most important for you to know that he is doing his work well. He should work a lot, well and diligently. You don't care where he comes from. If he is just behaving well and working decently, then everything is okay. Now, as Mark, the failing servant, describes the perfect servant, Jesus Christ, he omits his genealogy. In his narrative, this is not necessary. And the servant is expected not to speak much. He should work. In the Gospel according to Mark, therefore, we do not find detailed sermons of the Lord Jesus like in the Gospel according to Matthew. For Romans, you may remember that Matthew wrote his Gospel for Jews. Well, Mark wrote it for Romans. Romans were people for which it was important that one did something. You should not talk much. You should work and be active. Well, the Gospel of Mark is a fast Gospel. Therefore, the key word in Mark is the word immediately. We see that the Lord Jesus is constantly busy. with this or that human being, this story runs. The servant in heaven. At the end of the Gospel of Matthew, we find a king. All authority has been given to him in heaven and on earth. He stands there worthily. With Mark, it's different. Of course, Lord Jesus is risen and sits at the right hand of God in heaven. His disciples go to work in this world. What does this Lord do? In Mark 16:20 we read, the Lord working with them. He continued to serve, and he still does so. We are dealing with the living Lord Jesus Christ, who is still serving. He is still watching people to save their souls. Because for what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his soul? Or what shall a man give for a ransom for his soul? Well, Jesus, his life, the life of this servant, is the ransom for our souls. A question to you and me to think about. How do you serve? Are we good servants? Thank you for watching. Until next time, your Wim Hoddenbagh.